Look closely at them. Perched on the back of the sofa, front paws rigidly braced against the cold window frame, eyes darting, tracking every single passing car, pedestrian, and falling leaf. To the casual observer, this is just a cute quirk, a loyal pet waiting patiently for you to come home. But this is not a game. To a canine neuroscientist, that sofa is a high-stakes security post. It is a staging ground for a deeply ingrained, violently rehearsed biological sequence, and your dog is trapped inside it, unable to clock out. Most people assume they know exactly what is happening here. They think their dog is exerting alpha dominance over the neighborhood, or worse, they think their dog is simply bored, leisurely enjoying the complex, shifting urban view outside the glass. But behavioral neuroscience tells a completely different story. The antiquated alpha theory has been dead for decades. This isn't about dominance, and they are absolutely not enjoying the view. This is active environmental scanning, driven by evolution, fueled by chemistry, and it is exhausting them. What you are witnessing is a state of acute barrier frustration. The window acts as an invisible, transparent force field. It prevents your dog from executing their natural instinct to investigate and resolve. They can't sniff the stranger. They can't approach the threat. This total inability to resolve a novel visual stimulus creates massive behavioral frustration in the brain. The frantic pacing, the scratching, the explosive alarm barking. These are severe displacement behaviors. Your dog isn't trying to be the boss. They are biologically overwhelmed. Then there is the classic mailman myth. You think your dog barks because they know the mail carrier is a genuine threat. Wrong. Your dog's brain operates on inadvertent negative reinforcement. The mailman approaches. Your dog's arousal spikes. They bark. The mailman drops the mail and walks away. To your dog's associative brain, the barking worked. The threat retreated. This triggers a massive, self-reinforcing dopamine dump. The dog learns, I barked, the intruder left, I won. This isn't protection. This is a chemical addiction to the dopamine loop. When your dog mounts that sofa, a highly specific physiological cascade begins. It is an autonomic nervous system response. The moment a stranger breaches their perceived territorial boundary, the amygdala fires. It immediately signals the hypothalamus. Instantly, the sympathetic nervous system activates, flooding your dog's bloodstream with noradrenaline. Their heart rate skyrockets, their pupils dilate, cortisol surges, priming their muscles for explosive, immediate action. This is not leisure. This is a rehearsed vigilance protocol that hijacks their entire body. And you can literally hear the difference. Listen to the bark. Researchers at Eötvös Loránd University conducted spectacular spectrographic acoustic analyses on over 4,000 dog barks. They proved that barks directed at window intruders are statistically distinct from any other vocalization. They feature a significantly lower pitch, a harsher tonality, and a rapid, highly repetitive temporal structure. This is an evolutionarily conserved alarm mechanism. It is mathematically designed to maximize acoustic penetration through physical barriers. The acoustic science backs this up beautifully. A landmark study out of the University of California, Davis, analyzed the parameters of these domestic disturbance barks. They found high-amplitude, broadband frequencies that are almost impossible for predators to habituate to. These barks are hardwired, visually triggered startle responses. They are not intentional communication. Your dog isn't consciously choosing to bark at the window. The environment is literally pulling the neurological trigger for them over and over again. This constant, rehearsed vigilance comes at a terrifying biological cost. A massive behavioral epidemiological study out of the University of Helsinki analyzed over 13,000 domestic dogs. They found an astonishing 72.5% of dogs exhibited highly reactive or anxious behaviors. Stranger-directed reactivity is the primary driver of window guarding. Chronic exposure to environmental triggers, like an uncovered street-facing window, doesn't just annoy you, it radically exacerbates their baseline anxiety, trapping them in a state of hyper-arousal. The physical damage goes much deeper than anxiety. A retrospective analysis from Penn State University correlated physiological stress with canine lifespan and disease. The results are sobering. Dogs living in a state of chronic environmental stress suffer statistically significant decreases in lifespan. The allostatic load of continuous cortisol exposure destroys their immune systems over time. It leads to higher incidences of severe dermatological and gastrointestinal diseases. That favorite spot on the sofa is slowly killing them. But what if they look perfectly calm between the barks? Don't be fooled. Researchers at the University of Lincoln investigated heart rate variability in dogs exposed to visual barrier frustration. Dogs staring out windows showed a massive decrease in heart rate variability. This explicitly indicates high sympathetic tone, extremely high stress. Even when perfectly silent, they are physiologically redlining. Window guarding is incredibly taxing on the central nervous system. Your dog is exhausted. To understand why a golden retriever or a French bulldog feels compelled to aggressively patrol an apartment window, we have to look back, way back. Wolves are deeply territorial, but they are incredibly stealthy. Excessive alarm barking is utterly unique to the domestic dog. As early wolves transitioned into village dogs, living on the periphery of human settlements, our ancestors selectively bred them as early warning systems. The ancient camp dog. Their job wasn't to fight. It was to stand at the edge of the camp and sound the alarm. The living room window is just the modern equivalent of the prehistoric camp perimeter. And this bond is incredibly ancient. At the Natufian site of Ain Malaha in Israel, archaeologists discovered a 12,000-year-old burial, a human, eternally resting their hand on a domestic puppy. This profound discovery proves how intimately dogs were integrated into our earliest living spaces. Dogs that possessed hypervigilant scanning behaviors for approaching threats were evolutionarily favored to survive. We built them to watch the window. But domestication fundamentally altered their underlying biology. Research at Humboldt University details the neural crest hypothesis. The multi-generational process of domestication caused mild deficits in neural crest cell development. This is what gave dogs their adorable, floppy ears and shorter snouts. But it also permanently altered their adrenal glands. This critical genetic shift significantly lowered a dog's threshold for the fight or flight response, making them exponentially more reactive to passing visual stimuli than their wild ancestors. It gets even stranger on a molecular level. A landmark study mapped the entire genome of domestic dogs at Princeton University. They discovered structural variants in specific genes directly associated with Williams-Beuren syndrome in humans. These genetic insertions make dogs stereotypically hypersocial. So a dog at a window isn't just looking at the environment. Their genetics compel them to intensely monitor the sociability and intent of every single approaching human. It is an acute, unyielding hyperfocus. Because this window-guarding behavior is deeply ingrained, genetically rehearsed, and chemically rewarding, we face a terrifying paradox. What happens when it simply stops? If your dog has spent years patrolling the sofa and suddenly stops looking out the window, you might assume they finally calm down with age. Never make this assumption. The sudden, unprompted cessation of this behavior is a major clinical red flag. In veterinary neurology, it almost always masks severe hidden pathology. First, you must consider the physical toll. Jumping onto a sofa and holding a rigid, braced posture against the glass requires immense core and joint strength. Research at North Carolina State University demonstrates that degenerative joint disease and osteoarthritis are vastly underdiagnosed in adult dogs. If your dog suddenly abandons their window post, the primary diagnostic rule-out must be occult pain. Hidden pain in the hips, the stifles, or the lumbosacral spine. The physical act of climbing to their post has simply become too agonizing. Then there is the silent, progressive thief of sight. Window guarding relies heavily on acute motion detection at a distance. If a dog stops barking at passers-by, but still barks at sounds near the front door, their world is rapidly shrinking. The onset of progressive retinal atrophy, or developing cataracts, will degrade their ability to track visual stimuli. They haven't lost the primal desire to guard your camp. They have simply lost the physiological ability to see the threat coming. But the most alarming reason a dog abandons their lifelong routine is neurodegeneration, canine cognitive dysfunction, dog dementia. A cross-sectional survey out of the University of Sydney found that over 14% of dogs over age 8 develop CCD. The sudden loss of rehearsed daily routines, forgetting to mount the sofa, failing to recognize the familiar mailman, is often the first detectable clinical sign of cortical atrophy in the aging canine brain. Do not ignore the silence. It is screaming at you. So the next time you see your dog rigidly braced against the glass, eyes locked on the street below, don't just see a bored or quirky pet. See the biology. See the millennia of evolution, the genetic hypersociability, and the crushing physiological toll of continuous vigilance. They are a sentinel, trapped by transparent glass, driven by ancient, inescapable chemistry to keep your camp safe. Do them a favor. Close the blinds. Give their adrenal glands a rest. Give them peace. How many hours a day does your dog spend guarding the window? And what is their absolute biggest trigger? Tell me in the comments below. We need to understand the invisible allostatic load our dogs carry for us every single day. Subscribe and hit the bell, because in the next video, we are breaking down why your dog insists on following you into the bathroom. And I promise you, the evolutionary science behind it is even stranger than you'd expect.